Hey, good job. My boss said that with a casual tone, and to make it worse, he was laughing. To be honest, it irritated me. Seeing everyone else around laughing at it made me even angrier. Fine, I'll get my revenge on all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Asterisk Revenge Office. Today, I'm going to share a new story with you. Let's get started. I'm Tom, a 42-year-old office worker. My main job is in marketing, and analyzing numbers has always been my strong suit, so it feels like a perfect fit for me. But lately, the office relationships have been rough, and I've been wondering if I should stay here. The main culprit is my manager, Joseph. He's 2 years younger than me and also my boss. Honestly, he's not fit to be a manager, but since he's the president's son, that's probably why he got promoted. Joseph is always surrounded by people sucking up to him, but I don't care much for bowing down to power, so I treated him just like anyone else. Apparently, Joseph doesn't like my attitude. He keeps saying, "I'm your boss, you know, and I'm going to take over as president someday." Being rebellious won't do you any good. I don't feel like I'm being rebellious at all. I just point out when a strategy doesn't look good based on the data or when Joseph's saying something that doesn't align with the numbers. I would do the same no matter who it is because that's my job. I try to be as diplomatic as possible, and since Joseph is my boss, I give him the respect he's due. But Joseph doesn't like it. He even said to my face, "When are you quitting? I wouldn't mind if you left as soon as possible." So yeah, Joseph doesn't like me, but he also dislikes my coworker, James, who's my junior. James is 2 years younger than me, the same age as Joseph, and they joined the company at the same time. Joseph keeps saying things like, "We're the same age, but I'm a manager, and you're still a regular employee. You're really useless, you know. You can quit any time." The truth is, James is my junior from high school. Joseph says James is useless, but from my perspective, James does his job well. He just doesn't promote himself, so people tend to underestimate him. If James left, it would be a serious blow to the company, but Joseph and the other employees don't seem to realize that. "Tom, how about grabbing a drink after work?" James asked me. He's probably troubled about something. James and I have always gotten along despite having different personalities, and we've been close since high school. There was a time when James didn't get along with his dad, and by some coincidence, I ended up helping them patch things up, earning his dad's trust as well. It feels good to be recognized by others, so I try to live up to that trust. As soon as we went for drinks, James started venting. Apparently, Joseph had been making sarcastic comments again. Even when I tell him not to let it bother him, James still gets worked up. If that guy is going to be the next president, I should probably start thinking about a new job soon, I muttered. James sighed too. "Yeah, I get that. Honestly, if you leave, Tom, I don't think I can stay here." We both sighed again. One day, I had to attend a client event. Along with me were Joseph as the department manager and 2 co-workers who started at the same time as me. These guys were Joseph's lackeys. On the day of the event, we had to take the company car to the venue. One of them didn't have a license, and the other was a terrible driver. Joseph always brags about driving luxury cars, but given the circumstances, we couldn't exactly have him drive. So, since I drive regularly, I ended up being the one to drive. After parking at the venue, I walked in with the other 3. At the reception, they confirmed, "4 of you, right?" Just as I was about to respond, Joseph, in an overly dramatic tone, looked at me and said, What are you doing here? What's he talking about?" As I stood there dumbfounded, Joseph turned to the receptionist and said, "There are only 3 of us from our company." Then, with a smirk, he turned back to me. "All right, thanks for your hard work. The driver can go home." Now I furrowed my brow instinctively. Did he really just say that here? Then my other co-workers chimed in. "This event is really important for us, So it's a big deal that Joseph, our future president, is attending. Having you here, someone who doesn't follow Joseph, is just a nuisance. Yeah, Joseph doesn't even consider you part of the team. You're just the driver. Thanks for driving us here." They laughed. "Oh, I see how it is. They know this client is important, yet they're sending me away." The thought of it made me want to laugh. I barely held back the laughter and said, "All right, I understand." But Joseph, with a smug look on his face, said, "Come on, driver, get out of here already," which finally broke me. I couldn't stop myself from bursting into laughter. My co-workers probably thought I'd lost it. Even Joseph frowned in confusion. I didn't care. I turned to the receptionist and said, "It seems I'm just a driver, not an employee, so I'll be leaving now." The receptionist looked shocked. Joseph, apparently amused that I said that to the receptionist, laughed and said, What's wrong with you? Have you gone crazy?" My co-workers laughed along with him. Joseph told me to come pick them up when the event was over, but I ignored him, turned my back, and walked out of the venue. I could still hear my co-worker laughing. "Boss, the driver's gone. Let's go already." I drove straight back to the office and called James. I apologized to James and explained the situation. "So that's how it is. I'm going to hand this in," I said, showing him my resignation letter. James sighed and said, "Yeah, I'll do the same." We both realized this company had no future for us and had been looking for the right time to quit. I left my resignation letter on Joseph's desk and left the office right at the end of the day. The client event would be wrapping up soon, but I wasn't obligated to go pick them up. It wasn't an official task, and they could easily get back by train. Later, after I got home, my phone rang. As expected, it was Joseph. "Hey, hurry up and come get us," he said. I replied, "What? I've already clocked out. It's impossible." Joseph was clearly drunk, slurring his words, and I couldn't even understand what he was saying. One of my coworkers took over the call. "We can't get home without a ride. You're the driver, so get over here." I couldn't help but laugh. "I told you it's impossible. Tell Joseph tomorrow that I left my resignation letter on his desk and already spoke with HR." My coworker snapped, "I don't care. Just get over here." But I told him it was impossible, hung up the phone, and switched it to silent mode. The next day, when I arrived at work, the office was buzzing. I had braced myself for some reaction to both James and me submitting our resignation letters, but it seemed like that wasn't the issue. Joseph was shouting at my coworkers, "What do you mean we lost the contract?" "I don't know. Yesterday at the event, you were talking with their president, right? Maybe something happened there," one of them replied. Joseph exploded. "Are you blaming me for this?" "No, of course not," the co-worker stammered, and they kept arguing. I calmly walked to my desk, grabbed the handover documents I had prepared, and went to give them to Joseph. "What the hell is this?" he yelled. I calmly replied, "I left my resignation letter here yesterday and already informed HR. These are the handover documents." Joseph glared at me. "Oh, right, I saw that. Finally, the incompetent one is leaving. Just leave them anywhere. I don't have time for this right now." "Well, I'm starting my vacation leave now. Thank you for everything," I said. Joseph, looking even more irritated, snapped, "Get out of here already." Joseph and my co-workers spent the whole day scrambling over the mess from yesterday's client event, and it became such a big issue that even the president got involved. Meanwhile, I left the office, ignoring the chaos. The next day, as I was on vacation leave, James called me to meet him at a cafe. "Tom, it's been a while. Yesterday must have been tough," greeted James's father. Who had invited me? I thought. "I've already told my father about the situation at work," James said, and his father nodded deeply. "So, have you decided to join us?" James's father asked. "If you're still offering, "I'd be honored," I replied. James's father frowned. "By the way, what's with that Joseph guy? He was completely drunk yesterday, telling me how he's doing my company a favor by working with us and that I should start appreciating him since he's the next president. The nerve, and I heard from my secretary that you were sent home as a driver." I nodded. It turns out James's father is the president of one of our client companies. The only reason they were doing business with our company was because James and I worked there. In reality, they could have easily gone with another firm, but Joseph seemed to completely misunderstand, thinking our company was doing them a favor by working with them. How ridiculous! To top it off, the receptionist at the event yesterday was James's father's secretary, and I had already met her before when I had dinner with James and his father. That's why I went out of my way to tell the receptionist I was leaving. James's father, the president, had been urging us for a while to switch jobs and join his company. He wanted James to take over as president, but James thought he should experience other companies first and ended up working at our company, partly because I was there. But after seeing Joseph's behavior, James became even more conflicted about taking over the family business. Both James and his father sought my advice. I told James to use Joseph as a negative example and take over the company without becoming like him. James seemed to agree with that, and now he's studying to prepare for the role of president. So James was also timing his resignation carefully. The president said, "I don't want to work with a company that treats their clients so disrespectfully. And with you and Tom gone, I have no reason to continue the relationship. That's why I ended the contract." I replied, "Yeah, the office was in chaos yesterday." The president laughed. "I'm sorry for that, but don't worry. I didn't mention either your name or James's. I didn't want to cause any trouble for you." In the midst of the confusion, hardly anyone even mentioned my resignation. Honestly, it worked out well for me. Eventually, both James and I officially resigned and joined James's father's company. Unlike our previous workplace, the atmosphere is much more welcoming, and the employees have made us feel right at home. The president sighed and said, "That Joseph manager just won't give up. I've told him multiple times that I can't tolerate his rude behavior, but he keeps making excuses like blaming it on being drunk or denying he said anything at all. He still contacts me. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up at the office." I nodded in agreement. Joseph's not going to accept that he's the reason the contract was cut. If he loses face over this, his position at the company will be in jeopardy, so he'll never admit it's his fault. Just then, an employee came in and said, "Sir, you have a visitor." To our surprise, it was Joseph and one of my former co-workers. The president asked James and me to come along, so we followed him to the meeting room where Joseph and my former co-worker were waiting. When we walked in, Joseph and my ex-colleague both looked shocked. "Tom, James, what are you two doing here?" Joseph exclaimed, while my former co-worker muttered, "Wait, were you headhunted?" The president calmly replied, "I simply hired talented employees. There was no headhunting involved." Suddenly, Joseph seemed to realize something. "Wait a minute, James, and the president is also James. Could it be?" James nodded. "He's my father." Upon hearing that, both Joseph and my former co-worker turned pale. My former co-worker turned to me and asked, "But why are you here, Tom?" I revealed the truth. James is my junior from high school. I've known the president for a long time, and he's always said I'd be welcome any time I wanted to switch jobs. I was sick of working under someone like Joseph, and since he kept telling me to quit, I took him at his word and resigned. Joseph's lips trembled. "No way." I spoke up. "Do you finally understand why I was laughing when you sent me home from the event? The receptionist was the president's secretary, someone I've known for a while. Of course, the president heard about the whole exchange. He also knows how you've been constantly telling me and James to quit or calling us incompetent." Joseph shook his head furiously. No, I didn't say any of that. If anything, it was this guy. He pointed the blame at our coworker. My coworker's face twisted in disbelief. What? After all I've done, supporting you because you're the next president, and now you're throwing me under the bus? Incompetent, you say? Joseph shouted angrily. James and I couldn't help but laugh at the situation. I added, it's one thing to be the next president if you're qualified, but someone like Joseph, who's clearly not, should probably step aside. You can't even manage your current role properly, so how can you expect to lead the company? James and the president both nodded in agreement. Shut up, Joseph roared, but I wasn't stopping. You've already lost the contract because of your horrible behavior at the event. You can't hide that. It's embarrassing, but there's no covering it up. At that moment, the president spoke up. I've recognized Tom's talent for a long time. This contract could have gone to another company, but because Tom and my son worked there, I kept it. But a manager who hurls insults at my son and Tom, and that same manager being the future president. On top of that, the next president insulted me at the event. Canceling the contract was the only reasonable decision. Joseph, realizing the gravity of the situation, desperately clung to the president. I'm so sorry. If we lose your contract, our company's performance will suffer, Joseph pleaded. I responded, showing up to a client event so drunk you can't even speak properly is unacceptable. Acting like you're doing the client a favor with your business. Maybe it's time you change that attitude. With that kind of behavior, it's no wonder the contract got cut. Joseph glared at me. Shut up. I don't need anything from this place anymore, he snapped before storming out. I turned to my former coworker and said, you knew this client was important, and yet you couldn't stop him. What does that say about you? He glared back at me, but all he could manage was the same weak, shut up, before calling after Joseph with a pitiful, boss. After that, I didn't hear from Joseph again, but their company's performance continued to plummet. Losing the contract with James's father's company hit them hard, but honestly, they had no marketing skills to begin with. Even though I left behind handover documents, it seems like none of the work was picked up. Within a few months, the company went bankrupt. I later saw Joseph looking gaunt, rummaging through the discount section at a local grocery store. It was clear he was struggling financially. A few months later, I spotted my former coworker in a cafe, desperately studying a book on interview techniques, which made it obvious he still hadn't found a new job. Meanwhile, I've been assigned to the marketing department at my new job and earned the president's trust. James is working hard in his role as the future president, gradually growing into the leadership role. I plan to keep supporting him as he becomes more and more like the president he's meant to be.